Hello there! I am Rags. Welcome to my humble abode. Please, join me. You're just in time. I was gonna read this article that I found about the Lord of the Rings. Or at least I'm gonna read however much of it I can stomach. Come with me on this magical journey. The history of fantasy is racialized. Lord of the Rings series sparks debate over race. By Sam Thielman? He looks like everything I could have possibly... He looks... Oh, what's his face? He looks like the Quartering. He does kind of... He looks like the lefty soy version of the Quartering. And I don't mean that as an insult to the Quartering at all. I have nothing against him. They just look very similar. They just look similar, right? It's a turn. He looks like everything I would have guessed. This is from the 20th, so it's about a week ago. Introduction of characters of color into Tolkien's fantasy world. I always hate that, characters of color. It just implies that there's a norm and everyone else has a color to them, and white people don't have a color. It's just, I hate that thing. Introduction of COC into Tolkien's fantasy world has some fans complaining, but as others point out, it's not less authentic to cast black actor. Ooh, we're gonna do it. Let's check. Black is capitalized. Does he capitalize white? Because I've seen this before. I have seen people capitalize black when referring to the... It's not a race, it's a skin tone. Black is... that is capitalized, but white will not be. Let's Control F, white. Oh, here we go. Yeah, we have it right here. Boom. Notoriously white. Notoriously white. Oh, the jokes write themselves. But there you white is in lowercase. Black is in uppercase. Now, I don't know about you. But that feels... I want... me think he doth tippeth his hand too much. Okay. The history of fantasy is racialized. I'm sure it is to some degree, right? I'm sure to some degree the history of fantasy is racialized because history is racialized. People used to be a lot more well, actually, I won't say that. People seem to be more racially focused now. Jesus Christ. I remember growing up in the 90s, and no one gave a fuck about race. It didn't matter what color you are. We're all in this together. We're all, it's all great. Everyone could make fun of everyone else. Everyone could have a stereotype. It's all good. Everyone had their turn to get made fun of, and all was well. And then these lefty people started focusing on race all the time. I swear to God, these Sam Thielman types think about race more than actual neo-Nazis. It looks, I don't even know. It looks fine, the picture. It looks fine. Notoriously low quality, though. This is 1240 by 744. As the new Lord of the Rings series gears up for its September launch on Amazon, the company finds itself navigating treacherous, if familiar, waters, and has already triggered a fierce debate over race by introducing characters of color into J.R.R. Tolkien's fantasy world. Because it doesn't seem to be lore appropriate. And that seems to be time and time again, over and over, endlessly, ad nauseum, to the point of sickness, so we say. That's the reason that pops up over and over and over from the naysayers. It doesn't fit the lore. And it would be very strange to have, because this takes place in the Second Age, which is before the Third Age, which is what the Lord of the Rings movies were taking place in. I'm not a huge lore nerd. I'm very familiar with the movies, but I'm not a huge lore nerd. It would be weird to see all of the super diverse cast of the Second Age, and then the Third Age, it is what it is, so it does make you wonder. The tech giant has spent a dragon's dungeon of gold, good on you for trying to do something lore appropriate, on adapting the beloved story, famous for its cultish fans. I don't know if that's what it's famous for, actually. No, that's not what this story's famous for. Some of whom are deeply enmeshed in the right-wing culture war industry. I bet a lot of them are right-wing. I bet a lot of them are left-wing. I guess if you are keen on traditional aspects of heroism and storytelling, I could see how some right people would be very keen on it. I certainly am, though I'm not really a right-wing guy. Maybe just a little bit in some things, but yeah, it is a very apolitical kind of story. The Lord of the Rings is. It really is. It's very approachable from every direction that you come from. I think you'd have to be a real nut to have politics that get in the way of your ability to enjoy The Lord of the Rings as a story. Yet it is fully aware its final product has to reach a broad and modern audience to justify its eye-popping expenditure. Which, by the way, it would have if they had the same racial makeup of the Lord of the Rings movies from 20 years ago, it would still reach a broad and modern audience. Because those movies hold up. And boy, do they hold up excellently. Those movies, they age like a fine wine. And I have a feeling that The Rings of Power is going to be spoiled before its season is done. The idea that we have to be diverse against lore in order to attract a modern audience really betrays the purpose behind what you're doing. Now, granted, they're doing it for money. Sure, it's Amazon, they're doing it for money. But you don't get the sense of respect and integrity that you got from Peter Jackson, who was very specific that they didn't want to insert things that were not present within the story itself. They didn't want to put themselves into Tolkien's world. They wanted to respect the mythos that he had created. They wanted to keep it, in a sense, pure. Co-produced by New Line Cinema, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power isn't part of Peter Jackson's phenomenally successful Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies, but it isn't... Oh god, I forgot the Hobbit movies existed for a second. I legitimately did. But it is intended to capitalize on their success. Yeah. A streaming series set in the world of Tolkien's high fantasy novels, with characters and battles drawn from the interior history and mythology laid forth in the book's extensive append... blah, 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 blah. Jackson himself is not... This is a long article. I'm probably going to skim it a bit. It costs $465 million to make the first season, making it the most expensive TV show in history. And over its projected 5 seasons, the budget will almost certainly exceed $1 billion. And I think it's going to be a lemon. I think this is going to be an over $1 billion just fart in a bag. I think, if I was to guess, legitimately... If I was to guess what the quality of this show would be, based on everything I know about their whole, oh, we have to be diverse, oh, the lore's not that important, blah, 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 and the marketing and all that stuff and the reception to it, the things they're focusing on, if I had to guess, I would say that this show is going to be a 4 out of 10. It may... 3 to 5. This will be a 3 to 5 show. I don't think it will be able to ascend higher than average, higher than mediocre. I don't think it will be able to do it. I think it will... I just don't think that the writing is going to be the focus, and I don't think that the characters are going to be the focus, and I don't think that the people who are writing this show have the talent and have a good track record of doing good stuff consistently. I don't think it's going to happen. I want it to be good, of course. I would love to have 5 seasons of a Lord of the Rings show that was legitimately good. That sounds amazing to me. But I don't think it'll be the case. I really don't think it will be. Let me see. It is the crown jewel in Amazon's increasing investment in licensing and producing movies and TV series, which went up from $11 billion to $13 billion last year. Let's see if we can... Lord of the Rings appendices are more of a show Bible, the kind of notes you'd give to teleplay writers than a narrative of their own. So producers have woven their own stories of romance and palace intrigue into the book's timelines, fairy stories, and genealogical footnotes. Which is cause for concern, as it should be. Regardless of, even if the writers were super talented, and they were some of the best writers there were, still something to be concerned of. That has allowed them to cast people of color as some of the series' elves and dwarves. Well, no, they always had that ability. They're just using it. Why would you not be allowed to cast people of color as elves and dwarves? Unless it had their own stories of romance and palace intrigue. What is it about romance stories and palace intrigue stories that allow you and open up the ability to cast people of color? Because I don't know. Why is that a prerequisite? Is it because you have to make up characters? Or if you have to make up characters to get your diversity quota, I don't know. It feels like you're not focusing on the things that are important to a show. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be badly written. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to suck hard. But the warning signs are there. The red flags are there. Recently, Vanity Fair ran a spread of promotional photos for the show, including images of Sophia Nomvet as Dwarven Princess Disa and Ismael Cruz Cordova as Elvish warrior Arondir. Yeah, it's weird to see black elves and black dwarves. Because as far as we know, there weren't any. And the biggest thing that comes up that I've heard isn't the race of this dwarf. Do we have a picture of him? Do we have a picture of him? Why? I scrolled and saw fascist. Ugh. Sure enough, twice. It pops up twice. Of course, in this article about Lord of the Rings, they have to say the F word twice. But the dwarf woman, the princess, she doesn't have a beard. And dwarf women have beards in the Lord of the Rings. I think there was a dwarfess with a beard in The Witcher, because female dwarves in that had beards, but they're not ready. That we finally could see that, and it would have been neat, and it would have shown that they had respect for the lore and respect to what Gimli told us about the lore and the two towers. But I guess that's just not beautiful enough, and she wouldn't look like a queen slay enough, so it's a little thing. It's a little thing. Not having a beard is a little thing. But it is that canary in the coal mine. It is that indicator. I don't know why I said it like that. That indicator of their attention to detail. Because every one of the fans is pointing their finger and saying, female dwarfs should have beards. And it just seems like an obvious thing that I guess they just missed. No, they didn't miss it. They decided to go against it. They actively decided to go against it. On YouTube, the trailer for The Rings of Power have 67,000 comments as of this writing, and thousands of them are the same quote from Tolkien about the corrupting and uncreative nature of evil. Evil cannot create anything new. It can only spoil and destroy what good forces have invented and created. By the way, that is true. If you go to some of these trailers for The Lord of the Rings of Power, endless comments with this quote. Boom, 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 boom. The entire page, top to bottom, comments filled with this quote. And if they ban it in English, you'll notice it's written in Russian, or it's Cyrillic a lot, because it got blocked to be writing it in English, and so they wrote it in all the different languages. And I seem to recall that when the Hobbit movies came out, people did not write this. Maybe they did and I missed it. Maybe it came here and there. But I don't remember when the Hobbit movies were coming out, people having this reaction. Huh. Interesting. Others were more blunt. Imagine spending millions of dollars to promote your woke social justice warrior garbage of a film. Way to tarnish a good franchise, read one. Fair enough. Amazon decided to destroy Tolkien's work, because why do a good job when you can just be corrupt and force your political beliefs, stated another. Non-fans rolled their eyes. Well, it seems like everyone who is an actual fan. First off, I don't fucking care about the non-fans. Can we start off with this? I don't fucking care what non-fans of The Lord of the Rings have to say about The Lord of the Rings. I don't give a shit. Their opinion doesn't mean anything to me. I don't give a fuck what a non-fan of Star Wars has to say about Star Wars. I don't care. If you're not a fan of something, and you're like, there, maybe I was a little hyperbolic. I might care what a non-fan has to say. But the fact that you have something like The Lord of the Rings, which has a very passionate and broad fan base, and you're saying non-fans rolled their eyes. Well, I don't fucking care if they did. I feel like the fans are the ones whose opinions you should be the most concerned with. They're the people that you're trying to appeal to the most. And if the people you're trying to appeal to the most seem to have a overwhelmingly negative to mixed view of what you're trying to do, that should be an incredible cause for concern. Because if you make the Lord of the Rings show and all the non-fans like it and all the fans dislike it, it is destined for failure. And it is destined to crash and burn and tarnish the legacy. South Park retroactively changed its Soul Black Kid character's name from Token to Tolkien. The kind of backhanded acknowledgement of its own mistakes that are a staple. Wow, you clearly don't fucking get the joke. What's this guy's name? Sam Thielman. He clearly doesn't fucking get the joke that South Park was making. It's tempting to dismiss the complaining as the usual internet nerd rage. This tips his hand so much in the way that he views this. Are fans upset about something that a new creation is doing? It's usual internet nerd rage. That's all it is. Similar disputes played out when actors of color started taking actors of color. Because if you're white, you don't have a color. You're just normal or so. That's such a stupid fucking phrase. Started taking new major roles in Star Wars products. Not really, no. People were super excited to see Finn and Rey. People to this day like those characters, against all reason, and against all logic. But the conflict is also... But that's the thing that they said. They said that, oh, look at all these racist sexists. That's what they said. Rose Tico, in particular. Because she was such a shit character in The Lord of the Rings. The Last Jedi. She was such a shit character in that movie. Such a foolish imbecile in that movie. When people didn't like her, what did Sam Thielman? What did he and his ilk say? Oh, you're just racist and you're just misogynist and that's it. Same as it ever was. Over and over. A broken record. Need a drink. Delicioso. But the conflict is also about the rise of two kinds of media empire. Not just one. There is Amazon, the crown jewel in the vast business empire of Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world. And there is YouTube, a place for every dork who likes to complain about pop culture and whose darker corners are a frequent haunt of racism and bigotry. Of course. Delegitimize those people on YouTube. Do what you can. Do what you can. It's like clockwork with these people. It's like clockwork. Do what you can to delegitimize the fan base. Frequent haunt of racism and bigotry. One group is populated by people who can afford to buy the rights to The Lord of the Rings, and the other is populated by people for whom The Lord of the Rings is the second best thing to the Bible. It's better than the Bible. It's subjectively better written. But for both, why is that the parallel you're setting up? One is rich and the other likes it? That's kind of telling. That's awfully telling, isn't it? For you to say that Amazon, well, they're rich enough to afford the rights. And the other group, they're just fans. Why would you say... Well, they actually care about the material. They're the actual audience with passion. It seems to me like you're very, very skeptical of Amazon's decisions here. It's just about money for them. Which, by the way, probably it's not wrong. But to use that as the dichotomy here, so the fans are the ones who are passionate, and the company is just the evil one. And yet, or not the evil one, the rich one who just want it for money. It's just about how much money they have. And yet, this article is clearly in defense of this show, and this company, and this production. Interesting. Maybe he tippeth his hand yet again. But for both, an incredible amount of money and influence is at stake. And Amazon, well, for the audience, no, it's actually not. I mean, maybe collectively, but no, it's not for both an incredible amount. An amount of money is at stake for Amazon, not for me. Not for me and all of the frequent haunters of racism and bigotry. No. Not for us. A lot of people are going to pirate this shit because they hate Amazon and what Amazon's doing to the lore. I'm not saying I will, of course, because that would be bad. But a lot of people will. Influence is at stake. No, the stake is on Amazon. They have everything at stake. All of the fans and the lovers of the Lord of the Rings, their concern is they're going to fuck up the mythology that is pretty much untarnished as of yet. Even The Hobbit didn't seem to take away the luster and sheen from the movies and the books, right? It's just sort of over there being fine or whatever. And Amazon is probably wary that its grand project could be vulnerable to attacks by aggrieved online superfans. As they should be. If you're Amazon, you would think that Amazon would be really keyed in to what the fans are saying. You would think, in a post-TLJ world, you would be very, very keen on having your thumb, not your thumb. You don't use your thumb to check a pulse. You use multiple other fingers. Because your thumb can have a pulse that can give you a misread. But you would think that Amazon would have a finger on the pulse of what the fans were saying. Hundreds of millions of dollars could be lost, and have been lost, in Disney's Star Wars movies, because the fans hated a movie. Hundreds of millions of dollars are at stake. And all you have to do is be respectful to the fans. That's all you have to do. It doesn't even cost you anything extra. But haughtiness. Oh, that great sin. YouTubers complaining about fan mistreatment. No, it is fan mistreatment. It is fan. You see, I don't know if you're actually passionate, Tom, Sam, whatever the fuck your name is. I don't know if you're actually passionate about anything. But fans, and rightfully so, they see themselves as having a sort of ownership, a principle-based ownership, over a franchise that they don't necessarily have the canonical rights to, right, or the legal rights to. Star Wars fans feel in a way like Star Wars belongs to them. Lord of the Rings fans believe in a way, that Lord of the Rings belongs to them. That it is great because they have this shared adoration of it. And it has this shared adoration partially because it has this broad fan base. They love it. It's a thing that they adore, and they pull so much from it. It's like a well in the middle of a town, and everyone draws water from the well. Even though maybe the king has the rights to the well, right, in his castle far away, all of the people of the village, they pull from the well. It sustains them. It gives them strength and enjoyment. That's a decent analogy, right? And so, when you poison that well, so to speak, not that this video is one big poisoning of the well, but if you were to put poison in the well, if you were to drop a corpse in the well, then of course people will see that as mistreatment of them. You are going out of your way to tarnish this thing that we are all having this shared adoration of. This thing that we draw enjoyment from, and sustenance from. Sustenance of the soul in terms of entertainment, right? You're damaging it, you're corrupting it, you're tarnishing it, you're poisoning it. And in a way, that is mistreatment of me and my brother and my sister next to me who loves it as well. And you didn't have to do it, but you did. But you did. Anyway, YouTubers complain about fan mistreatment. No quotes there. There should be no quotes. Because if you, Sam, do not believe that fan mistreatment in any of these properties exists at all, I wonder if you think it exists even in concept. Could it even exist? Could you actually have a legitimate complaint from YouTubers and from audiences about, this thing? And also, please do not denigrate. I don't write for The Guardian. I am a YouTuber, and I do not believe that your position is in any way more prestigious in a meaningful sense. You don't have a better opinion because you write your fucking trash on a fucking trash website. YouTubers complaining about fan mistreatment have hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of subscribers. Yeah, they're very influential. People care about what they have to say. Inevitably, they certainly get more eyeballs than you do on this fucking website. So, I don't know. It puts it into perspective, maybe. Inevitably, these fans are devoted to movies, TV shows, and comics from their childhoods. It's not inevitably. They're subscribed to these YouTubers because of that. Not the people subscribed to these YouTubers inevitably are. That's a bizarre way to put it. It's like it's reversed, is what it really is. It's not the way you said it. It's the other way around. Are constantly on these people are constantly on the watch for a new version that might expand the role of women, add characters of color, or include characters who aren't straight. So you're a fool. You're an absolute fool. Remember in that last paragraph, you said, and Amazon is probably wary that its grand project could be vulnerable to attacks by aggrieved online superfans. And I said that Amazon would be wise to have their fingers on the pulse of the audience and of the fans and their discourse. You too do not have your finger on that pulse, and you don't even have an interest in it. Instead of actually going out of your way to find out what's going on. What you've heard is good enough. From what I would imagine is a very, very, very super lefty SJW-esque bubble that you have surrounding yourself. I'm going to... This was written in February the 20th. On February the 20th, or at least it was published. Or as I like to call it, a post-Arcane world. Arcane is beloved. Arcane is a phenomenally good show. And if you have not seen it, you need to. Go out and see Arcane. Arcane is shockingly diverse. Characters of different ethnicities, species, races, sexualities. The main character is a lesbian. There are countless characters who are not straight white men. And yet the show is practically universally beloved by everyone, fans of the game and otherwise. It takes a lot of gumption and testicular fortitude. No, I won't give Sam that credit. It is a fool's errand for you to insist in a post-Arcane world that all of these YouTubers who are keen on popular culture are on the watch in a negative way, which is what you're implying here strongly, that women, characters of color, or non-straight characters, that we don't like them. What an absolutely foolish notion. Absolutely foolish notion. Lord of the Rings exists as a universe. It exists in lore. It has a mythos that is written down and established. When you go against that, people will have problems with it because it is about respecting the lore and respecting the material. Arcane respects the material, the lore, the League of Legends stuff. It's got a lot of good fan service in there. It's very respectful of its source. And the Rings of Power, this show, does not seem to be that way. It seems to be the opposite. We are going to tell our story and fuck the lore. Fuck what the world really is. This is our way to signal to the world, the real world, what we want. It is not about stepping back and putting up our hands and having immense respect for this sanctum of writing and storytelling that is the Lord of the Rings. This holy of holies. It's not about that. The attitude is, what can I do to put myself specifically into it and the things that I think into it? And that's what people have a problem with. These older franchises that have mostly straight white males, that's the way that world is. So if you add characters that are not like that and it violates the lore of the source, that's what people have a problem with. Time and time again we see this. Time and time again we see this. Time and time and time and time again we see it. And you, Sam, will refuse to acknowledge it. Because you can't. Because the moment you say, oh no, actually it's not about their color. It's not about their sexuality. It's not about their gender. It's about them respecting the lore. The second you give on that and realize that that's the truth, it all falls apart for you. Because you cannot give that foundational, fundamental. You can't do it. You can't afford to. It all crumbles if you do. When they're riled up, they can coordinate broad campaigns of harassment and blah, 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 threats of blah, blah, blah. It's the same crap we've seen. Same crap we've seen. In human terms, being the target of right-wing hate. Exactly, because this is only right-wing people who have problems with this show, right? It's just a bunch of right-wing. It's so easy, isn't it, to dismiss it? It's so easy to say that, right-wing hate campaign. I'm going to throw in a bit of a food for thought. Let's say that they were a bunch of just right-wing hate campaigners. Doesn't mean they're wrong. Doesn't mean they're wrong. If every person who was pointing at that dwarfess, princess, and said, that's a break in the lore that she doesn't have a beard, they could be the most vile communist or the most hateful neo-Nazi. They could be, it doesn't even matter what they are. They'd be right. They'd be spot on the money. You could have the most communist, whoever communists, or the most Nazi, whoever Nazi'd, and they could both stand shoulder to shoulder and point and say, that is a break in the established lore. And they'd both be right. They'd both be right. And neither of their ridiculous political positions would have anything to do with the fact that they're right. It can really mess with a marketing budget. And that kind of power is attractive to permanently aggrieved pop culture devotees. They're permanently aggrieved. What this says to me is that Sam believes that there's nothing that would please us. Because he's talking about me. He's probably talking about you, dear listener, who's tuning in to watch this video. Blessed art thou who doing so. Like, subscribe. Give me money. He's talking about you. He's talking about a lot of people. He is casting a broad net, a net over the entire lake. And he'll dredge up everything because of it. He's insisting that there's nothing that could be done to please us. That we're going to be hateful no matter what. We're going to be aggrieved no matter what. That there's nothing they could do. That it's our job to hate. It's our job to, I'm not going to say criticize, because criticize, that can come from a place of respect, as we often do on EFAP, the podcast that I have with Frangie and Muller, that you should watch all the time and give us money. But he's talking about that aspect. He's writing us off. It's like when a Christian says to an atheist, "Oh, there's nothing that would ever change my mind." I believe because I believe, and there's nothing that could change my mind. Right? It's that kind of foolishness. This insistence that no matter what you do, they'll be angry. That they don't actually have an investment in the lore. Because it goes back to what I said here. Right? It goes back to what I said here. He can't give up that foundation. Part of that foundation is that the fans are just always going to be hateful and they'll never like it. Even though I just used Arcane as an example, right? And there are many more. Arcane is just a nice, fresh example because it's such a perfect one that goes against everything he's preaching. The extremity of protest over the unrealistic presence of black. It's not about it's unrealistic to that world. Oh, we're doing the Space Wizards meant for children thing. Brilliant. Take a shot. If you've got lefty SJW social commenter bingo cards, fucking slap it, mark it. There we go. We got the Patrick Willem thing. The extremity of protests over the unrealistic presence of a black dwarf princess feels silly, considering the stories themselves are about wizards and magic rings and the occasional dragon. It's a classic. You only hear it from the lefties, is what I've noticed. You only hear it from the lefties. Thank you, Sam, in your infinite wisdom. Thank you so much, Sam, for letting me know that the Lord of the Rings isn't real. Thank you. This whole time I've been laboring under the delusion that Middle-earth was out there someplace, probably around Australia. It was actually a real place, and I could go to the Shire, and I could say hi to Sam and Frodo, and that they were real. Thank you so much, Sam, for once again failing the basic kindergarten level comprehension it takes to understand the difference between realism in universe and realism out of universe. Thank you for letting me know that dragons are not real, Sam. You're so fucking insightful. I can see why you're hired to write Guardian articles, because of these pearls of wisdom that just droop from your lips. The problem is not that it is unrealistic to our world, it's that it doesn't match with in-universe lore. It would not be realistic to the characters in Middle-earth and in that world to have these things exist. And that is the problem. The consistency, the structure of the in-universe world, that is something that is to be preserved. It's the garden that needs to be cultivated carefully and respectfully. And if you are a foolish and haughty, high on your horse, and ill-equipped gardener, the flowers, the plants, it will all suffer. And as a result, all of us have something less valuable to gaze upon. But audiences says Ebony Thomas, author of The Dark Fantastic. And what is the fuck is The Dark Fantastic? Race and the Imagination from Harry Potter to the Hunger Games. Okay. An associate people always fucking talk about race all the goddamn time. They focus on it. These people think about race more than neo-Nazis do. I swear to God. They're always thinking about it. Ugh. I swear to God, a Nazi could go to a coffee shop and have an espresso without thinking about the goddamn Jews and how they're ruining the world. But these people, they can't fucking take a step without thinking about race. Oh, this cement. Oh, it's a product of racialization. Oh my goodness, the air that I breathe, the entire society. They can't get it off their minds. Everything from the shows they watch to the products they consume, everything is about race. Race. They will not let it go. They can't let it go. It is poison to the cultural zeitgeist. And we will never, ever, ever be able to move on and move past it because they won't shut up about it. Ugh, makes me upset. But audiences, said Ebony Thomas, author of The Dark Fantastic and an associate professor at the University of Michigan, RIP, are not wrong when they say that black characters seem like they just don't belong in the notoriously white fantasy. Notoriously! It's so fucking transparent! Guess what? Black Panther's notoriously black. There. Two can play that fucking game. Yeah. Apocalypto, notoriously brown. By the way, Apocalypto, fucking great movie. Not a lot of whites in it. Fucking great movie. At least I think it's great. I really enjoyed it. I wasn't super critical of it, but really enjoyed it. That would be one. I need to ask Mahler and them if they want to see that movie again. Telling you. Arabian Nights, notoriously Middle East. What's one of those Japanese plays? I'm just not familiar with a lot of Japanese folklore stuff. Japanese mythology, notoriously Asian. African mythology, notoriously black. Egyptian mythology, notoriously furry. Ugh. You know what? If you had a story about Shaka Zulu uniting the empire that would become the Zulu Empire, and you just had a random white character, that would seem pretty out of place. And I'd be like, why are you here? What are you doing here, Kevin? What are you doing here in Africa? And Shaka Zulu's uniting all the tribes into the fucking Zulu Empire. What are you doing here? That's weird. You shouldn't be here. That's odd. It would be out of place. Yes, it would be out of place to have black characters in Middle Earth in a vast majority of the places here. It would be strange and out of place. Yes, it would. Because these are vastly predominantly white societies. It has nothing to do with our bias against black people or, oh, we just don't like black people. We don't like black representation. It's nothing to do with that crap that I know it's so easy for you to say that, to dismiss it all as that. Like we said, it's all unrealistic to the in-universe world. Especially with how much you push this diversity stuff. It always isn't that thought in the back of our heads now. Are you here because of an in-universe reason, or are you just here because they wanted to have diverse people? Is that the hand of the creator meddling in this world? Okay. The history of fantasy is racialized, she says. People are used to seeing fantasies and fairy tales as all white, particularly in faux medieval or magical medieval settings, Thomas explains. Yeah, because a lot of these stories were written by Europeans about Europe. So they are going to be vastly, predominantly white. Feel free to take all of the stories from Africa and the Middle East and China and Japan and the Philippines and Polynesia and Mesoamerica. Feel free to take all of these pieces of lore and these stories, these mythologies, these fairy tales, and have no white people in them. Feel free! Do it anytime you want! It's all there for you. But you won't take these things because you want to change the white stories. That's what you want to do. You want to take these predominantly white stories and you want to change them. Because if you took an Asian Japanese folklore myth and it was nothing but Asians, that'd be fine. It would be odd if it was otherwise. And no one would say a damn thing. No one would say a damn thing. You think people had an issue that there weren't any white people in Wakanda? Do you think anybody had an issue with that? No, no one did. Because it makes sense that there's no white people in Wakanda. Because they're the alt-right Nazis of Africa. But that's its own discussion. We're taking them out of the dream space. Which isn't a very good thing. We're taking them out of how they imagined it could be. No. We can imagine how it could be. It's very easy to imagine how The Lord of the Rings could be shit. In fact, I have a sneaking suspicion that come September, we will have all of those imaginations become reality. It's not that you're taking us out of how we imagine it could be. It's that you're polluting it and corrupting it for bad reasons. Your reasons aren't pure. And that you put your whims in front of it's not the writing should be the focus. The story should be the focus. The characters, the dialogue, the writing, the script, the craft should be your focus. But it isn't with you people. That's not the focus with your people. You people. That's not the focus for you. Your focus is diversity, inclusion, modern political messages. And you're co-opting these stories in order to present them that way. So that's why they're saying, who are these people? This is not what Tolkien intended. It's not accurate. Because that's the difference between fans and you, Ebony Thomas, associate professor at the University of Michigan. That's the difference between us and you. It's that we actually care about these mythologies, these modern mythologies. We actually care about the creations of these incredibly skillful men. We respect the legacy and we respect what they've done. And you don't. And you don't. Of course, if you're willing to go back to the poems and legends that inspired Tolkien, you will definitely find characters who are not... Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Things that inspired Tolkien are not the things Tolkien wrote. This doesn't matter, and you're a fool for thinking it does. The Prose Edda, compiled in 1220, included the Svartalfar, black elves who live in Svartalfarheim. Tolkien was a devotee of Old Norse prose and verse and even translated some of the verse into English. Great! The Norse Prose Edda can have Svartalfar, black elves who live in Svartalfarheim. That can have them. Because last time I checked, the Norse Prose Edda, compiled in 1220, was not the Lord of the Rings, written in whenever it was written. I don't know off the top of my head. But despite that, it is a fraught time to be adapting anything with even a hint of Norseness to it. Okay, is it? Pretty sure. Don't we have that movie coming out, The Norseman coming out? Isn't that movie coming out? Don't you have God of War? That was super popular and beloved. And you have Valheim. And you have Skyrim. And you have all of these Norse imagery. All of this Norse imagery and all of these very thickly Norse-inspired games and movies and shows. How could you possibly say it's a fraught time? Ugh. Oh, fuck. I didn't even read the next sentence. Jesus Christ. I'm 3 words in, and I know this is just going to descend into madness. American fascist organizations use Norse iconography publicly in lieu of more easily recognized swastikas and Confederate flags. Listen, fucker, you come down here to Arkansas, Confederate flags are fucking everywhere. You got black people in pickup trucks that have Confederate flags on them, right? It's just a symbol of the South. Oh, my God. And you know what? There's another difference between you and me. You're willing to say it's a fraught time to adapt anything Norse because some people use Norse iconography in a way that I don't like. So we're just going to fucking abandon it. We're just going to fucking give it away. It's just like Pepe. It's just like Pepe, and it's just like the OK hand sign. You people gave that shit up in a fucking heartbeat because people you didn't like allegedly used them. Nazis used Pepe, because everyone uses Pepe! Everyone uses Pepe! And Nazis are a subset, the 4 Nazis that we have left, Nazis are a subset of everybody! And you people gave that shit up. You gave up the OK hand sign, a universally recognized symbol. You gave it up. You were willing to concede and surrender that gesture to them because you are cowards. Sam, people like you are cultural cowards. And you will tuck your tail between your legs at a moment's notice. You will sacrifice gestures. You will sacrifice symbols. You will sacrifice all of it if you can try and score a point on the internet or point to a bad person you like. Or more accurately, point to people that you claim are bad. You will give it up in a heartbeat because you are a cultural coward. If it was a black symbol, or a symbol that came from Africa, if it was a symbol that came from Asia, if it was a symbol that came from Egypt, if it was a symbol that came from Mesoamerica, or anything like that, you would defend it. But if it's a Norse symbol, those Norse, they're fucking white, notoriously white, you might even say, you'll abandon it. It's not worth it. Those white symbols aren't worth defending. Some devotees are. I know how. I think. I don't even know how long I've been going. How are we gonna? What are we fucking doing it? White supremacists don't own Norse mythology, even if some of them think they do, any more than they own the Bible or the U.S. Constitution, even though they might think they do. Some devotees are refusing. No. You people give that shit up. You people give this shit up. You people give that shit up so quick. In fact, despite its array of wizards, magic objects, warring races, and deep wells of mythology, The Lord of the Rings is a decidedly non-threatening tale. Yes, it's for everyone. Because it isn't for... These are universal messages about coming together, fighting a common foe, finding camaraderie and friendship, growing as characters, the duty that you have to your fellow people. About selflessness, about striving forward, even though it might be difficult, even though it might be tough and uncomfortable and painful, even though you might die, you need to do the right thing. Fundamentally, a comforting story of middle-class heroes. Middle-class heroes. Fucking hell. Middle-class heroes. Gandalf's a goddamn wizard. He's like an angel. Legolas is a prince. Boromir is like the son of a essentially king. Aragorn is a king. I guess the hobbits are middle... Why are we even talking about this? It's a comforting story of middle-class heroes. It's a comforting story about heroes from all ends of the economic spectrum. Why are we talking about the economic spectrum when we... Jesus Christ. Socialism fucking... It's like this class... It pollutes everything it touches. It's poison, and it pollutes everything it touches. Do I even want to continue? How much longer do we have? Jesus Christ. Thomas, who loved Tolkien's, doesn't think so. Points out the notoriously restrictive Tolkien estate doesn't think so either. Are you sure? Are you sure? Or is it because the ones who cared fucking died, and that's when Amazon got their claws on things? Also, I don't give a shit what the Tolkien estate thinks. I don't give a shit. I don't fucking care. Tolkien estate could say something that doesn't mean it's true. The work stands on its own, regardless of what the Tolkien estate thinks. The stories exist. They are there. And they exist outside of the Tolkien estate. Fuck them. No, don't fuck them. In this case, Tolkien's official interpreters, I don't give a shit about official interpreters. I do not care. It's an argument from authority. A fallacy. One that I do not respect. Sam, it's a classic fallacy that you should not fall into. I don't expect better from you. What are we even going to talk about? My ancestors have been here speaking English for 10 generations, she says. Well, maybe you shouldn't fucking appropriate our culture. Or is it your culture now? I don't know. I don't know what the rules are today. All of that was said in jest, by the way. There's no such thing as cultural appropriation. It doesn't exist. Cultures don't belong to anyone. Anyone could do anything with any culture that they want. It's not the case that some strange people who are not from Anglo-American culture are suddenly demanding representation. We've been here for centuries. We've been existing. Make your own goddamn stories. Don't use stories that exist, regardless of what color is predominant in them, regardless of if they're notoriously white or not. Make your own shit. Don't corrupt what exists. Don't put your desires and your political messages and your disrespect ahead of the legitimacy of the creation itself. What a shit article. And I can't even bear to get through all of it. It's I'm not even going to start. Nope, don't even do it. It's all garbage. Well, that sure was fun and frustrating, honestly. You think you'd get numb to it, but I don't know. There's something about that kind of stuff that I don't know. It pushes your proverbial buttons. That turned out to be long. That was a long recording, but you know what? Thanks for sticking through. I appreciate that a great deal. I will catch you guys soonish. I've already got something else lined up for you. So, bye. See ya. Toodles. Ciao.